Hello, everyone. Welcome back to When Shooting is Life podcast. I'm your host, Kue Lee, and today I have Chris Pequin and Tanner Liang. The topic for tonight will be about USPSA shooting. So, for those who doesn't know you two, can you guys give a quick background about yourself? And Chris, you can start.
I got into shooting in 2017. Was my, fall of 2017 was my first year doing it. I had never owned a pistol before shooting USPSA and very minimal shooting period before that. I found USPSA from that uh, Top Shot TV show because JJ and Chris Tilley were on it and they were really good, and Blake, and it said USPSA Grandmaster, and I was like, well, I don't know what that is, but that's what I want to do. And so now I shot limited to start, and then now I shoot mostly limb optics and open, and I'm a master.
Tanner?
Um, so my name's Tanner. I've been shooting seriously since about 2017, 2018. That's when I got my first handgun. Um, I started competing just because I'm competitive in nature, and every time I would go shooting with a friend at a range, we'd always end up competing in some sort of fashion. So we figured, why not shoot USPSA to actually have some sort of sanctioned competition setting. Um, I started off in carry optics, and now I'm currently an M class shooter.
Daddy.
All right, nice, nice. So before we start, what have you guys been up to and what have you guys been working on? I could start first, and I would like to hear both of your opinion about this. So ever since I did the podcast with Luke, I've been working on only to go as fast as I can get alphas, but that doesn't mean, going slow, but only to shoot when I could really confirm my dot is on the A zone. And that is also the reason why I'm switching back to shooting Glocks because I feel like the heavier trigger it will it forces me to really work on uh it it forces me to work through the trigger and it gives me more time to really make sure that my vision is there compared to when I was shooting the Shadow 2. The trigger was so light, I felt like I'm rushing through my shots because I know how fast and light the trigger is. So I end up with bad hits. What do you guys think about that?
Yeah, I don't think it's ever a bad idea. Pushing your visual awareness and what you're really seeing when the timer's going off um, is something that's just going to slowly progress. You got to shoot as fast as your brain can comprehend what you're actually seeing. I noticed when I was shooting irons, I was much more shooting like how you typically do, where I indexed, it was close enough, and I popped two off and I had some mics. And then once I switched to a dot, that visual confirmation was a lot faster.
Mm,
Um, but you mainly only shoot dots.
yeah.
So, uh,
Okay.
yeah, no, I mean, it's never a bad thing. I think last year I was telling you to just keep pushing speed and then accuracy would come, but it didn't.
Yeah, it honestly didn't. I feel like I got okay. So with this Shadow 2, it definitely gave me the confidence to go fast and to go be more aggressive. But I noticed that my hits drop majorly, and I just end up with really bad hits. Like it's not even alpha delta; it would be like Charlie deltas or two deltas. So when I switch back to Glocks, even though might shoot a little bit slower, I tend to get more alphas.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And I mean, obviously, points are always, king.
yeah,
It all depends on the stage, too. I mean, there's plenty of times where I just want to hang two on paper. It all depends on, you know, how important the points are. Like, for example, you shot stock and barrel last week. Indoors, they're all going to be short courses, and you have to get alphas.
hmm,
I mean, even just dropping, 25% Charlies, it's going to lower your score
mm,
significantly.
that
But
makes
you're
sense.
outside and you're shooting a big long field course, speed's going to wind up trumping it more.
Mm, okay. What do you think about it, Tanner?
Um, I think you can do the same thing with your CZ. I think you just need to be more deliberate with your mental state, I guess you can say, right? Like you're using,
Yeah.
I think you're falling on the CZ as like, oh, this is the reason why I'm not processing. But then you somehow switch to a Glock and that changed your mental switch to be like, okay, so now I can suddenly process because I'm shooting a Glock. I don't think that's necessarily the case, but if it's allowing you to actually process and like pay attention to your sights and see and call your shots, that's fine. Because I mean, we have shooters who compete with Glock all the time. Um, but I mean, yeah, like Chris said, right? Like if you're actually shooting at a pace to where you can see and call your shots, that's the pace that you want to be at. At least for like when you're shooting a stage or like in a competition setting. But like during practice, like obviously we would want to push that a little beyond our headlights, I guess you can say.
Mm.
And it kind of depends on what you are, because I mean, I'm assuming you're talking more in matches that you're practicing this,
Yes.
and it all depends on what you treat a match as. If you're trying to win a local, or if you're trying to test a skill or work on something at a local. I mean, I had plenty of locals last year where my whole goal was to shoot as many alphas as possible, which I mean, I know is like always the goal, but dial back speed 10% and really hone in on alphas. Or my goal was to be just raw time champ and just hang two on paper no matter what the hits were.
Mm. Okay.
So I mean, it all depends on how you view it. Um, I don't shoot enough outside of locals to decide to use them as training. So I want to win every local I go to.
Mm.
So
Yeah,
That
I
makes
mean,
sense.
basically my opinion on it is that the gun doesn't matter. It's you.
Okay. Yeah.
I mean, I went through the same thing. I used to switch guns like every 3 months, and like it was like, okay, I shoot this gun the same as this gun, and it's like, well, it's not the gun. It's obviously me at this point.
All right.
yeah.
What about you guys, man? What you guys been up to? What you guys been working on?
I got that Ace VR like 4 days ago, so I've been doing that some. Um, honestly, I mean, I'm kind of more pushing speed than anything, and just sight confirmation because I don't feel like recoil or trigger pull or anything is quite like my gun. So it's sort of visual confirmation is what I'm mainly using it for in transitions.
Do you think the Ace VR is better than dry firing?
No,
No. All right. Okay. What about you, Tanner?
I mean it's better than
Oh,
not dry firing at all.
yeah, yeah, that is true. Yeah.
Which,
Um, I
yeah.
honestly, I haven't really been touching guns lately. If I'm gonna be 100% honest with you. But if I do touch a gun, it's been more my rifle, and I don't know
Mm.
why, but I feel like when it's winter time, like it's like I don't really have an interest in pistols as much. So I just kind of touch the rifle a bit more. Um, but I'll pick up the pistol occasionally. I haven't shot in a very long time. Just I feel like moving to Minnesota and being in winter here and seeing how there's not a ton of matches, just really indoor matches. It's I kind of shifted priorities, I guess. But I know once it starts warming up, I'm gonna be shooting more for sure.
Yeah, indoor is nice, but it just barely scratches the itch. It's kind of like foreplay with no actual finishing. It's kind of nice, but it's not. It doesn't quite do it.
Yeah.
You know, and the thing too is if you have a local and the smallest thing, 'cause it's only two short courses, you might as well have, not even looked at the scores. It could be anything. It could be just botching a reload or one mic and you're done.
Yeah.
And so I got tired of looking at scores because I'd see names above mine I didn't even know. So I was like, meh, I don't even care anymore.
All right, all right, all right. So, yeah, let's begin. So, the first question that we have, um, does the gun and gear matters when it comes to USPSA shooting?
Yeah, I'd say it definitely does, depending on the division for sure. Um, you're going to buy advantages. You could have open, for example, and you could run a Glock in open, but if you're not taking advantage of all of the low-hanging fruit given to you within the division, then you're going to wind up being at a disadvantage and you're going to lose to somebody else who's better. There's obviously those outliers like Shankoli or Nils who will beat someone with a plastic gun, but um, depending on the division, if you're not going for a heavy gun, or if you can have a magwell and you're choosing not to do a magwell, or if you're
Mm,
not getting to your maximum round count that you can within the division, then you're going to be at a disadvantage.
I agree with that. What about you, Tanner?
Um, Gear in terms of your rig, because you could have a magnet, and if you're choosing not to use a magnet on an unloaded start, that could slow you down, or starting from a barrel, you could slap one to your magnet, that could be a disadvantage. I mean, you can have really cheap, crummy gear, and it's going to eventually, once you get to a certain level, it's going to wind up holding you back.
Yeah, so I think like if I had to answer that, I would say it kind of depends on what you're trying to do with it. Like if you're trying to get every single advantage and every single edge you can to win, then 100% yes, like I agree with Chris. But if you're just someone who just like, hey, like I just want to compete once, or like just want to shoot my gun and all you have is like your carry rig, then then I would say no, right? Because like you're not there to win, you're just there to really test yourself and test your own gear. So I think it just depends on what you're trying to get out of it. Um, because yeah, like I strictly used to shoot from appendix, like no matter what, and I found myself to be somewhat competitive, but I was still like okay, and now I want to win. So why am I shooting from appendix if I want to win? All these
Mm.
other guys are having like super decked out rigs, like outside the waistband rigs. They're having like the magnet. They're having these speed loaders, whatever. And it's like, well, like why not get that too? So we can be all on the same like playing field. Um, I know guys who compete from duty rigs, and it's like, okay, like you're competing to win from your duty rig, but like you don't have to shoot from your duty rig, you know? So it's like it really just depends, in my opinion, right, what you're trying to do out of the sport, right? If you're trying to win or just shoot.
Well, and even like my lever action PCC technically is a PCC and it checks all the boxes for that division, but I'm not going to beat, over 50% of the people because I'm shooting lever action.
Right. And like you know that. So it's like, whatever, you're just having fun at that point. Who cares?
Exactly. So it's what you're trying to get out of it. But
Yeah.
if you want to win, then you should try to own every advantage you can.
So yeah, basically in conclusion, it just depends on what you're trying to get out of it. Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. Next question. Do you use local matches as training, or do you take every local matches as if it was a major match?
So yeah, we kind of touched on that a little bit earlier.
Mm.
Like I said, I don't shoot enough. Otherwise, I get one day off a week and I usually use it to shoot a match. So, I mean, I maybe go through 5,000 rounds in a year. So I treat each local like I want to win it. And it helps me keep that match mindset for majors and stuff like that. If you approach every stage where what's going to be the best stage plan, um, you know, not trying to use it like training, but what do I have to do to win? Then that'll help you when you get to a major.
So, so for me, it depends on which club is hosting the match. So like for example, Burnsville and Oakdale, they tend to have easier stages, so I would use those matches as training, like shooting from concealment, testing my gun and gears. But then if it's like MAPSA or PIPS that are hosting the match, because their stage are a little bit more complicated, a little bit more bigger, I would take it as if I was to shoot at a major matches since the stages are more challenging. So for me, it just depends who is hosting the match.
Yeah, I could see that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think my answer would probably be the same. I think it just depends, right? So, I mean, I'll use myself as an example. So before moving up to Minnesota, I would shoot 3 to 4 matches a month. like almost every weekend there was a match somewhere. So I wouldn't even live fire. I would just strictly dry fire. I would go shoot a match and be like, okay, this is what I wish I would have done. This is what I noticed I could have done better. And I'd dry fire that, and then I'd try it out at the next match, and I would use my ranking at that match as like a metric. You can say like, oh, okay, like I beat this guy this time, or like I placed third this time, right? Like that's how I used to take it. Um, but then I met some friends, right? And we would actually schedule out range days. We'd be like, hey, like, let's not shoot this match this weekend. Let's just have a range day together. Let's bounce ideas off each other and like actually experiment and see like what we can do without being pressured or rushed by a stage format. Um, but there, I mean, like Chris said, right? And you, Koo, like it kind of just depends on the match and what you want to get out of it. Because there's been times where I shoot a match and I'm like, okay, like I don't care if I win, I don't care if I lose. Like I'm just gonna test myself here. I'm gonna see, like I'm gonna shoot a stage and I want to be able to determine all my alphas, all my charlies and deltas before I see the tablet, something like that. Or there's times where I'm like, you know what, like I don't care and I just want to win. So I'm just gonna focus on being consistent the whole match and doing what I do and shooting my match, and we're gonna see what that does.
Yeah, and I feel like indoors, I treat it a lot more like training. It's more just like I want to touch my gun, some in the off season. And like I said, the scores don't matter as much because the smallest thing will wind up, tanking your score. So I just try to have fun with them and test something. Usually it's speed in the off season.
And I think it's good too to approach it like that sometimes, right? Because there was a period when I was shooting and like I took it so serious and like every single thing was match mode. And if I wasn't winning, I was just like the most like agitated dude ever, and it burnt me out. So eventually, like the times where I was like, you know what, like I'm hanging out with my boys, like we're all military, so like one day we're not gonna see each other again, whether we deploy TDY, PCS to different base or whatever. So I just kind of I took time to soak it in and really just have fun, and that honestly like lit a fire on my ass again to get like passionate again. So I think it's a good mix up, yeah.
Well, and what's nice too at locals, instead of trying to win a match, depending on your capabilities and where you're at, try to find someone who you view as just as good as you or maybe a little better, and then they're your pace car, they're your competition, and just try to beat them. So that's what I did for the longest time. Just try to find someone that, like at Pips, I try to go against Ryan B, because he's really fast and he's shooting PCC, so he's ripping just as fast as splits, and on those farther targets he can hit him faster and he probably won't reload ever. So it's pretty comparable. So when I'm at Pips, I try to compete against him.
Chris, since you and I are in Minnesota, been shooting in Minnesota more than Tanner, which club do you think hosts the best stages, in your
Uh,
opinion?
Probably MAPSA, but I mean, and I would honestly shoot MAPSA if they had a week night match, but it's always on the weekends, and I'm never free on the weekends in the summertime. Pine Island, though, they have tons of advantages about their club because with the rocks, it's not grass like Oakdale, so you're not going to get rained out as easy. With Oakdale, if you had rain in the morning, you're not going to be able to shoot that match later that night. And then you have time constraints at a lot of clubs because they don't have lights. But Pine Island starts at 5:45, and they can run as late as they have to because they got the lights there. So, and then they'll also have usually around 75 shooters and 5 stages on a weeknight. So that's pretty big.
Yeah, I'm actually really surprised that Pips had 5 stages and that much shooter on a weekday night match. It's really surprising. And I think Pips hold, they had really good stages too. But yeah, I definitely agree with you. I do prefer Mapsa, but I like Pips a lot too.
Mhm.
Um, so yeah, the next question, which division in USPSA do you think will make you learn how to become a better shooter faster?
Does Tanner want to start that one?
Yeah, sorry, I've been muting my mic in between. Um, I think honestly, probably open. I would say open because that's the race gun division, right? Like you can do whatever you want. Your rig doesn't matter. Like you can set it up in whatever configuration you want. So like that's going to be the division where all the heat is, right? All the heavy hitters are, and like at that point, it's like I would say it's probably a true testament of yourself. Um, because there's no, like I said, there's no restrictions. It's fair game. So yeah, like if you wanted to, get better at shooting faster, I think there's no better way than to use the open gun.
Yeah, it all depends on how you're viewing it. I was gonna say production,
Yeah.
especially when it was 10 rounds,
Yep.
because every round mattered so much. So you couldn't just spray like open. You couldn't just rely on accuracy and numbers. And then it was minor power factor and irons. So your sight confirmation was much harder, and every shot mattered so much more. Your stage planning mattered a lot more. And so it's kind of like how batters when they're in the batter box, they have all the weights on their bat and they're really swinging it hard, and then they take it all off, and then they're able to, hit it that much faster and harder. So I feel like if you're in production, you have all these disadvantages to you, and if you're able to overcome all those and then go to a dot division or major power factor or a higher mag capacity, then you're going to be even faster. Like Ryan Carlson, he was in prod for a long time, and then he switched to limited, and he had major power factor and a larger mag capacity, but he was still drilling alphas just as fast. So it all depends on how you view it. If you want to see who can get, faster and beat more people in a shorter amount of time, then yeah, open. But in the long run, I would say production.
Yeah, I was gonna say the same thing, but you said already. So the question I have for both of you, since we're talking about production, do you guys think a red dot will make you a better iron shooter, or do you guys think iron sights will make you a better red dot shooter?
I think irons would make you a better red dot shooter.
I think a dot would make you a better iron shooter.
Explain
I,
why, Chris.
um, you have to work on your index so much harder with irons. You're not just relying on finding the dot and tracking it. You have three focal planes that you're aligning. Um, and I think it's just kind of like that analogy I said earlier, where you have disadvantages working against you, and then when you can move to just two focal planes, then you'll go even faster. That's my take. At least that's what happened with me.
Tanner, why do you think the dot will make you a better iron shooter?
So for me, in my experience, and I would say a lot of other people's experience, um, you learn target focus. And like a lot of times when you have a like it's, let's say a new shooter or like a shooter that is new to a dot, the biggest thing is like finding that dot, right? Like they would draw and they'd be like fishing for it, like where the hell is this thing? It's broken, right? But then as you keep working, you kind of like Chris mentions, you kind of build up that index, you build a structure, and you learn how to point a gun. You learn how to just look at something, draw your gun, or transition to something, and lead with your eyes, and then the gun kind of follows. Um, so for me, I started with irons. I shot okay with irons. I got to a dot. I learned how to shoot a dot, practiced with a dot for a while, and then whenever I would go back to irons, it was like second nature. And I was shooting irons target focused, which I think is the best way to shoot irons. To shoot period is target focused. So that's kind of my opinion on it.
Yeah, I agree with you, Tanner, because I started with an iron, and during that time I was front sight focused because I didn't know any better. And then the red dot taught me how to target focus. And then going back to irons, target focus, focusing with irons, I feel like it tend to be easier. So I agree with Tanner on this one.
That's fine.
So yeah. All right. Um
Yeah, Chris.
yeah. You were gonna say something? Oh, okay. All right. So next question. Making sure that I have the next question. Okay. So do you shoot stages how the designer intend them to be shot, or do you feel gaming stages is a fair game? Chris, you could start since you like to go fast.
Um, I feel like gaming's fair game, and if a stage is broken or if you break a stage, then I mean, if I'm not going to do it, someone else will, and I don't want to get beat out by someone else because they broke it and I had too much pride to not do it. Like at Cornhusker Classic last year, there was an obvious intent of the stage where you'd have to start in the back and do like a large loop and then retreat in the end and shoot one target. And I was the first shooter on that stage. That was my first stage. And I looked at it from the front position. I was like, if I just fall backwards out of the shooting area, or if I even just push my gun out, I can just press it to paper and shoot it. And, so it didn't take long. And I realized everyone with the good times did that. So I feel like it's fair game. And I kind of like to look at stages and even at a lot of times at locals or majors, people will see me trying to break stages and sort of roll their eyes. But it's, I think there's fun in that personally.
Yeah, I would agree. I think, that's the reason why a stage plan is there. That's why you get your time to come up with a stage plan. And if I guess if someone wants to call it breaking the stage, then I would blame it on the stage designer. Like, hey, like you should have proofed this beforehand, right? Um, and again, it just comes down to one of those things where it's like USPSA, IDPA, whatever sporting thing it is, it's a game. And if you're not treating it as a game, then whatever. But there's been times where like I would see a hole in the stage, like, okay, like I could do this, right? But it's gonna be risky or whatever. But I'm gonna shoot it how it's designed just to kind of see, right? They're like it really just depends on how I'm feeling that day, if I'm taking it serious or not. But as far as is it fair game? Absolutely. Absolutely.
So the question I have for both of you is that when you guys do stage planning, right? Um, do you guys always take the risk because it will make you go faster, or do you guys tend to play it safe?
I guess it depends on the stage. If it's a short course, I'm just trying to survive it. I'm not going to risk it. It's not going to be what wins a match for you, but it could definitely be what loses a match for you. Um, Iowa does a ton of short courses. Just, hang two on paper and get out of there alive. Wisconsin section match 2 years ago, they had a big strong hand, weak hand, box to box stage. And I just looked at it like, just go slow, go 75% of what you think you can do, and just make sure that you leave it with two on paper on all of them. And that was definitely one that tanked it for a lot of people. So, I didn't shoot it aggressively at all. I probably finished um, maybe 65% or 70% to the, you know, match winner or the stage winner, but I still won the match. It needs to be one that you don't die on. But if it's a
Mm,
big course and I can cut a position, I'll do it for
mm.
sure every time.
Yeah, for me, I think so Chris, you mentioned that it like for you it depends on the stage, right?
Yeah,
Okay. I would say for me, it depends on myself, right? Like it depends like my confidence level. Like if I have to take a riskier move on a no shoot, like I'm gonna sit there and be like, well, I'm not necessarily the best at shooting no shoots. Like I shoot no shoots, so I'm really good at it. But like if shooting the open target, that's not supposed to be the no shoot. I'm not the best. So like let's say, for example, like I'm having a good day, I'm shooting very consistent, like I'm leading my squad. I probably wouldn't. I probably would just play it safe and just keep shooting consistent. But if I needed something, right? Like if this was like, hey, you take this risk, and if it works out in your favor, you might win the match, or you're definitely going to lose it now. It sort of depends, like on myself and as my like my level as a shooter, I guess you can say, right? Just like being self awareness or being self aware.
oh yeah, and there's definitely matches you go to where you're like, man, I can hardly even, feel the gun in my hands or just everything just feels off, and you're just trying to just survive it. Um, but if you think about your normal baseline, I'd say um, it's all about the weight of the stage, how important is it, and if a mic is going to just, lose you the match, or I mean, if it's a big stage and you can really cut off 5 seconds by, I don't know, taking a paper from a distance or something, yeah, I'll do it. Especially if it's just, an open paper, you just got to weigh the risk of it. And a lot of it too is in locals testing what you can do. So trying that kind of stuff in locals and then realizing, I can actually really do this and I can, you know, finding out like, oh wow, I can hit that open paper or that steel from that distance. Then it'll give you that confidence in a major to, game it and cut a position or whatever. So
Yeah, I was gonna say that too because it just depends on who is hosting the match. And for me, when I do my stage planning, I always try to risk as much as I can, just so that I could get out of my comfort zone. Because I feel like if I play it too safe, like how I used to back in the days, it it keeps me comfortable and I plateau. So me as a B class shooter, I always try to take as much risk as I can, just so that I'll be more confident.
well, the more you risk it, then you can learn where your wall is
Yeah.
and what you are capable of. And then you just keep pushing it.
But what if you risk it and you can't shoot for shit?
Then you realize you need to spin it back and play it safe.
Yeah,
I
because
had one time where I'd risk it and I'd be like, I think I can hit a couple of paper in between an activator or something like that. And then you realize it's just not worth it or something, or maybe it's just better to just drive an activator, stuff like that. So, um, yeah, I mean, it's also a matter of, I mean, it's very situational. Like Tanner was talking about no shoots. A lot of times go for a risky headshot if it's stationary. But if I'm moving, I'll play it safe and I'll just, get my hits and move on. So,
all right. So for the next question, this is going to be mainly for you and Tanner to answer since you guys are a master. Um, what does it take to progress through USPSA classification?
um, so I feel like D class. So I went through all of them. I started with an initial classification of D and worked my way up. It wasn't something that just came naturally to me. So I could really speak to this and what I felt like helped me through each class. One of the biggest things too that'll help a lot of people is you can take classes and you can learn from GM stuff like that. But I always feel like it's good to ask the guy who just classed up. If you're in B and you're asking an M or a GM like, what do I got to do? They might not be able to think about that or relate with you. Whereas the guy who just made A be like, I did this and it worked for me, and you could try that. But in the simplest way, I feel like to get to C, just hang them on paper. Just don't miss. To get to B, you need to either dial in your accuracy or your speed, but still don't miss. Um, to A, both of those need to be working together, and you need to, hang uh, six good classifiers in a row. And then master, which is all I can speak to, is consistency. You can't really have that dumpster fire that's going to be kind of good but still bring you down, because it's amazing how when you're working toward M, it could feel like kind of a bad run to you, but it's still good enough to score. And B is a hard one to get out of. I was in B purgatory for like 2 years because it's such a big percentage range. Whereas the higher you get, the harder it is to regress because it'll just drop. So for you for getting out of B, I'd say you have the speed and your manipulations down, and maybe just dialing in accuracy and getting those two to work at the same time at speed.
Yeah, I agree with that because most of my classifier I usually I'm usually like 73 to 74%. And it's because I just need one extra alpha and then I would have been A class. So that's why this year I'm trying to concentrate more on accuracy. And that doesn't mean by going slow, but really focus that really make sure that my vision is there. So hopefully I can make A class in the next classifier match, which is in April at MAPSA. So, what about
Well,
you, Tanner?
which is kind of hard
Oh,
too,
yep,
bro, because that's one day. So you
yep.
better hope that the best you shows up on that day, and then you know that those 6 runs are going to be your most current 6 runs. So it all depends. Like one of my last classifier matches I shot was really cold out, and that's just it's hard to
Yeah.
do that. So.
Yeah, so I like how Chris mentioned like to get out of certain classes, like you work on one thing and then you stack on that. I actually like that a lot. My experience, so my first classification was B class in carrier optics. I didn't know what the hell was a class. Like I didn't know how to get class. I didn't even know there was class. I thought it was just a letter by your name, like whatever, you know. Um, so yeah, my first class was B class. Then I just kept shooting the match, like shooting matches, showing up, and I didn't really take it serious. I just kind of was just trying to learn the sport, learn the game more, just get more familiar and comfortable with everything. I would ask questions like Chris mentioned. I would watch these shooters shoot, and I'd see their movement, and I'd see how like fluid and smooth they are, and they're like they're in their stage planning. I would see how methodical they are, and like how they're picking apart stages, and I would see how they shoot different arrays and all these different things. And I'm like, oh, okay. So like I'm just gonna try to copy them and see what happens, right? Like they must be doing something more than like better than me. Um, so I kept shooting and then I made A class. And then I was like, cool, like nice. And then I shot a classifier match. And then at this point I was pretty comfortable. I was pretty familiar with like how the game works. So then I then just kind of shot for fun, right? I kind of stopped caring. And when I did that, I ended up shooting consistent. And just like Chris mentioned, to get to A to M, or I guess M to GM maybe, is just consistency. So once I started to prove that I was consistent, I can just shoot my match and just like rely on my pure skill. And if I can just do that for every single stage, like every single shot, I would get somewhere. And I ended up making M class. So um, yeah, no, I think that's I like Chris's I like the way he mentioned, different sort of skills and they stack on each other.
Yeah, I definitely agree with Chris. So, in your opinion, your guys' opinion, do you think USPSA class defines skills?
I think it's pretty accurate. I mean, it was pretty accurate for me where I was at, and my major match performance at level twos and threes was within my classification. I used to kind of think it was a little hokey and not super indicative of what most stages were like, but it seemed to be pretty parallel to with where I was actually performing at matches. Especially now that they have the newer classificate or classifiers with a little bit of movement, it helps a lot more, I think.
I think in the questions you mentioned skill. I
Yep.
think skill has to be kind of defined more. So like when you say skill, are you saying like, I don't know, shooting, I guess?
Yeah. Shooting. Do you think um you're like let's just say that you're a GM or M, right? Do you think that proves that you could actually shoot?
Does it prove that you can shoot? Yes.
Okay.
Does it prove that you can perform? Yes and no. I think that depends more of the shooter. And I say this not to dig at USPSA's classifier whatever system. I say this because I came across a lot of people who are high class, but they don't perform like their class says. Thank you. Um, they're not winning matches. They're not winning. They're not when doing that. They don't do good at majors, whatever it may be. And it's just like, dude, you're getting beat by a B class shooter, but yet you're a master class or you're a GM. Like, there's something lacking there. Um, and I think the option to reshoot classifiers too kind of skews it a little bit. right? So it's a lot of people kind of just chasing that letter just to say, hey, I'm an M or hey, I'm a GM. But then, like I said, when they go to a match, they don't shoot at that level. So I'm a little yes and no, I guess you could say.
Well, and there's different ways people approach a sport. You can have people who treat it like a bowling league, and they're just there to hang out once a week and see their buddies and shoot guns a little bit. You could have it where you're really wanting to do match performance and as good as you can, and you don't care about classifiers. Like I've had matches that I've shown up as unclassified in a division and just gone for top three within the division. Or you get people who chase classification, and they're all fine. I mean, I know plenty of shooters in Minnesota who clearly just chase classification, and they'll hunt down classifier matches, and you always see them at it, and they are either really high or they're basically a zero because they just threw it, And that's the thing too is you get plenty of people who, um, especially when you get higher up and you're like, oh, I just need one more good one to get to my next class, and I don't know, fumbled a reload, and then you just see them just dump four into a no shoot, just to make sure that it gets dropped. So, I mean, there's always going to be that layer of it, but I'd say if you were really approaching it how the sport was intended, it's kind of accurate. At least it was for me.
Yeah. Yeah, if like I agree with you, Chris. Yeah, like if we took it as it was intended to, then absolutely 100%. I think it's just, everybody's a little different, right? And their goals are different. So it just that's what kind of miscues things and like for me, it's kind of hard for me to see a letter by someone's name and then judge, I guess you can say, right? Like obviously if I'm gonna see a GM, I'm gonna be like, okay, so like they obviously know what the hell they're doing. But like I've been beat by B class shooters before. And I'm like, dude, what are you doing in D class? Like, what the heck? And they're like, I don't know, man. Like, whatever, whatever. Like, I just had a good match today, or whatever it may be, or I don't shoot enough matches to get my new classification, or like I don't take this serious enough, whatever. You know what I mean? So it's like I take it with a grain of salt. I take it with nowadays at least. I take it with a grain of salt.
Or they sandbag it to try to get plaques.
Yeah, like coup.
Yeah, like
No, I have never had a plaque before, man. Hey, but guess what though? I did beat Chris last Thursday.
there you go. You see my stage I posted on Instagram?
Yeah. Yeah, I'm just kidding, but that's the only reason why I beat Chris. Hey,
Um,
so I'm not sure if this is true, so help educate me on this. So I heard that the more people shoot a classifier stage, the harder, like the score gets higher and higher the more people shoot at it. Is that
the
true?
new the new the new 100, the new hit factor, high hit factor will change,
Yeah.
and it just gets more and more shot out like El Prez
Hmm.
when it. I mean, you see a lot of these guys who are older, and maybe they're M class or something like that. But now, if you go to Oakdale and you shoot a clapped out 90s classifier, you might have a good run and look at it and go, how does that a B class run?
Yeah.
And then a lot of the guys I know who classed up, you know, when the what was it, 2021 classifiers came out, um, you know, it was because they were brand new, or a new division comes out and they're mirroring it off of, an inaccurate, side by side comparison. Like, wasn't LO mirrored off of production classifications when
I
it
thought it
first
was
started?
I thought it was both open and something else. I thought it was two divisions though.
That'd be open because of major power factor, though. Might have just been CO classification.
Unlimited, maybe? I don't know. Yeah, well, yeah, I don't know.
But
Something
I mean, you can get that too when a division change or comes in and they don't really have anything to compare it to. Like when PCC first started, they were kind of just throwing numbers out there for the high hit factors because it was the rifle division hadn't been around yet. So
Do,
yeah.
do you guys know how they come up with this number? For example, are they waiting for like a top shooter to shoot it first, and then they go based on the top shooter, or do they just throw
Right.
random numbers?
I think it's an average, like your percentile.
Okay.
So like I think, and Chris, you probably know this because you're a nerd at this stuff. But like let's say you take like Max Michelle and just like the super squad guys, and they go out and they freaking max out a classifier. Now we have to shoot it, and they're the average, right? Like they're
Okay.
they're the percentage. It's almost like the results of the stage, right? Like the number one's always 100%, and then whatever it may be. But it's like, yeah, I don't know. Chris
And
probably
I don't
like,
I don't really know how it happens because um I had a high hit factor on a classifier and it didn't change. I mean, I don't know when they changed it. Like I had one where I had, shot over 100% on it, but it didn't. I mean, like I had seen it again then months later and nothing had changed. So I don't know how that works.
All right.
yeah.
So,
I think it's
yep.
I think it is an average though, because I asked the same question a while ago to somebody, and I was like, like what, like who's to say that I didn't just shoot a GM run? And they were like, oh well, it's a super shot out classifier. It's been out for years, and you got guys going zero to hero on it, and then when they do get lucky and they get a hero, now that just adds to the average and it just increases it. And so many guys have done it over the years, which is why you get the term shot out.
Right. Yeah, and I
All
don't
right.
know when they adjust that or not.
Do you guys agree that carry optic and production should have the same score percentage?
Is that how it works?
Yeah. So carry optic and production is exactly the same.
No.
No.
Okay. All right. So Tanner already answered this question for himself, but for Chris, what are your thoughts on reshooting classifier?
I've never done it. I don't. I've never gone to a club that allows it. Like I've heard people ask before if they could reshoot it and pay for it, but I've never I've never seen anyone do it.
So
So,
so
but
what are
I
your
wouldn't.
thoughts?
I don't think it's. I don't know. I mean, I guess it depends. I mean, if they just do it one more time, maybe they had botched a reload or something. If they can do it, if they let's say they shoot it twice and they do get a really good GM run, I mean, it's still their ability. So I guess it's I mean, I don't love it, but it's still what they did. I mean, they still did it. You could run it 5 times. It doesn't mean you're going to get a GM run. So, I mean, it's still their ability.
Yeah,
Yeah, I
I
want to
agree.
elaborate. I want to elaborate on my
Yep.
take. So when I was first introduced to reshooting classifiers, my first match or my first couple matches, like the match director was like, "Hey, the classifier's still if you guys want to reshoot, it's $5 per reshoot." And I was like, "We can reshoot it like for fun? Like, just gotta pay me $5? Like, sure." Like, I had no idea like this would go toward my classification, whatever. So like, I did a couple times, I reshot, and I didn't know. And then later, somebody was like, "Yeah, dude, like, you pretty much that goes toward like that goes towards your class." And I was like, "Oh, like." Well, that's kind of like I don't know. I feel like that's kind of cheating in a way, like in my opinion. So I had a bad taste about reshoots, and if I saw someone doing it, I was like, oh, dude, like here we go, another freaking letter, like a letter chaser here or whatever,
Paper
just
GM.
arrogant. Um, but then I was talking to some other shooter about it, and he's a big shooter in Mississippi, and he was like, he mentioned that if you're gonna reshoot, like let's say you bomb a classifier, like let's say you're a B class shooter, but you should be competing at an M class or even GM class shooter, so you need to get out of that division to shoot at majors against like in your division, because otherwise you're just a sandbagger and you're just gonna beat out all the B class shooters and whatever. That's not fun, right? If you need to reshoot for that reason, absolutely. Like if I know I'm at a GM level, of course, like yeah, and I bombed a classifier, then sure, I might reshoot it because I'm like I want to get to GM so I can compete with GMs at majors.
When I personally feel like a GM classification should only happen through match bumps. I mean, I think that there's too many GMs out there. I mean, how many times do you see a GM and they go to, a level 3 or whatever it might be. And I mean, they're beaming over an 85% finish. It's like, well, yeah, but you're a GM. I mean, shouldn't you be a little higher? I mean, if you're a GM, technically you're top 5%, you think.
Mhm.
So, Chris, for the viewers that doesn't know what match bump mean, can you define tell us what it is?
I'm gonna probably screw it up, but so at a level 2 or higher, I think it is, you have to have 3 GMs within your division finish in the top like 3 or 5% maybe or something like that of 100%, and then that percentage you shoot would be a classification. So you could have 3 GMs, but if one tanks it or whatever, like that way it's more a consistent average and you'll have, a good number of GMs to make it more accurate. But yeah, I think that's what it is. It's top 3 or top 5%. 3 GMs, top 5%, I think it is. And
So,
then let's
yep,
say you shoot 75%
yep.
to the division winner, then that would be your new classification, and it would look just like another classifier in your most recent bank of classifiers. And then going back to real quick to the reshoots, another thing that's a little bit sour about it, if you think about it in the gaming term, is that you're going to be able to take the better of the two. It's not like a classifier match where you're shooting 6 classifiers and they're all different classifiers and they're all going to be your most recent 6. If you shoot the same one twice, you instantly get to drop the lower one and
Yeah.
only pick the higher one. So it's a very easy way to have no risk and high reward. So, like I said, never done it. Totally see the advantage of it. But I've never been a paper chaser or anything like that. If anything, people argue would maybe say that I'm a sandbagger, but not true. But yeah,
So why do you think you're struggling getting the GM card?
me?
Yeah.
Oh God,
Or are you not
yeah,
struggling?
because I'm not a GM.
Okay. So what do you think you need to work on to become a GM?
Oh man, I would have to live fire. I would have to shoot a lot more than I do. I'd have to touch my gun. Um, I, ignoring the Ace VR and I've done the last 3 days, I don't touch my gun unless I'm at a match. I'm lucky if I remember to clean it, and that's another thing too. That last match that you beat me at, my guns were so dirty that they were jamming like
The excuses.
my last 5 shots or something. And I finally cleaned my LO gun for the first time since I got it, which was over a year ago, and it was just caked in so much, you know, uh, dust, dirt and dust and everything. Um, to make GM, I would have to have no kids. I would have to live fire minimum once a week, and dry fire at least probably every day. Um, I think that I'm lucky to be an M personally.
That's my excuse why I'm so B class. I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding. All right, so
And it's
yep.
like, sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off,
No, no,
but
no, go for it.
it's I talked to Donovan Moore. He runs Point One Tactics. You guys are familiar with instructors and classes, whatever. And I think he's only an A class shooter in open, and he shoots from appendix, and he's a great shooter. And I'm like, dude, how are you only an A class shooter? And he was like, well, like I just don't care, like whatever. And we got into the discussion of like paper this, paper M, paper GM, and then I seen a post and it was like, hey, people say paper this, paper that, but if it was that easy to be a paper M or paper GM, then why isn't everybody an M or a GM? So I think there is some sort of skill, right? Like you still have to be able to shoot at that level. So like for Chris to get there, like it's not easy, to get. I mean, even for you too, like to be a B class shooter, it's not easy. Like not everybody is a B class shooter. It's not easy at all. So I just wanted to air that out for
Well, there's
people
plenty of
listening.
C class shooters who would love to be in your position. I remember when I first started, I was at Oakdale, and some of the higher level shooters at Oakdale that I was seeing. It's like, man, they're so good. And then they were really only like B or maybe A. Um, it does have a different look to it for new shooters to see a, a good B class shooter or A class shooter. It's nothing to scoff at. Um, and I think for me with I probably could have made M faster if I'd have just left limited sooner. I couldn't shoot irons. I thought I was pretty good. I wasn't that good at irons, and I left limited, and open just came so much more natural to me. Once I switched to a dot, it was like a game changer. Um, I mean, I think dot's the biggest advantage you can have in the sport. More than major power factor or mag capacity or anything like that. I think a dot is huge.
Anything else you guys want to add on to that?
No,
No. All right. Um, what does your make ready look like?
mine's pretty brief. Um, so I was at Oakdale and they have it where this is like a long time ago. They have it where on your two short stages you go hot from the one short course to the other short course. And Lane Huso was talking to me and he was like, "Dude, your make ready is just so short. All you do is just load your gun and holster it." He's like, "What I do," he said, "I use the timer as like a, you know, or the make ready command is sort of my opportunity to, at pace, draw my gun on the target, pull the trigger, make sure everything feels good." And I was like, "Oh, okay, that's a good idea. I'll try that." And he tells me this at the short courses. So I do it on the one short course. It's fine. I'm walking hot to the next one. They say make ready, and I draw and I pop a shot off. And I'm like, God. And I just like, they were just quiet. And I was like, and I unloaded, showed clear. It's like, that's a DQ. And they're like, oh, okay. Yeah, you're DQ'd. So my make ready now is, I mean, especially now that I have a dot, is literally just um, draw it, make sure my dot looks good, drop my first target, load my gun, rack it, and I'm done. And that's it. Um, my make ready is brief now, like it should be.
What about you, Tanner?
So mine used to be short and brief, like not caring at all, whatever. Just kind of my mentality was like, hey, shoot it how you brought it, whatever. Um, but that's hurt me a lot. There's been times where like my mags weren't loaded, my dot wasn't adjusted, um, like mags weren't indexed correctly, like how I wanted them to be in my mag pouches, whatever it may be. So my make ready, I think starts like I'm huge in the mental game of things, right? Like I think everything we do in life is all mental, like how we look at things or how we process whatever. So like I dove deep into this, like the mindset game of the sport, and my make ready starts when I'm like in the hole. So like when I hear, hey, so and so in the hole, on deck, whatever, whatever. That's when my make ready starts. So when I'm in the hole, my make ready starts. Um, So from there, like I'm gonna hand the tablet off, or I'm not gonna pace for three or two stages or match stages, runs, right?
Mhm.
Um, and then yeah, like from there, I'm rehearsing. Like as they're shooting, I'm rehearsing my plan, and I'm like staring at the ground. I'm like having my little air gun, and I'm doing this, whatever. Or I'm watching shooters, right, and like seeing like okay, like he stumbled there, so I take a mental note of that, like or whatever it may be. Then when I'm up to the line and they tell me to make ready, I don't. I probably should do this, right? I know a lot of my friends do it actually. Like on the make ready, they'll draw like it's like the timer going off, and they like do their thing. I don't do that. I just pull my gun out, adjust my dot, load my gun, index my mag properly, holster it, take a deep breath, close my eyes. And I think the biggest thing that I do that has helped me has just been before I actually run like the stage. In my head, I'm thinking, okay, like here's all the targets in my head, and here's how I'm going to shoot each one. Or like in my head, I'm thinking, I'm imagining it all. Or I'm like, this is the position that I need to get into. This is when I'm gonna, exit. This is how I'm gonna exit, and I just rehearse that in my mind before I shoot. Um, that's helped me a lot, but it's also hurt me because I think I tend to overthink things, or um, when I'm shooting the match or the stage, and I make an error. I do very poorly at correcting it, like on the go, on the fly. Um, so if I don't shoot fluid or smooth that stage, it's probably a dumpster fire.
Well, and the thing too is if you the risk in treating your make ready command like a timer going off is I've heard of people thinking they heard him say make ready. They draw their gun and then they're just DQ'd. There's Ben Moore in Minnesota. He'll look at the RO every single time they say make ready, and he'll say make ready. And they'll say yeah, and then he'll draw his gun and do his make ready. So there's a big point in being cautious about that. I've never seen anybody get burned on that, but that's a huge risk. And like just like Tanner said, yeah, like if I hear him on deck or if I hear him in the hole, I'll usually stop pasting and then yeah, just kind of close my eyes and I should be able to visualize the entire stage. If I can't remember every last target, I probably won't remember it when the timer goes off. So I close my eyes and I try to just visualize the entire stage. If it's a short course like a classifier, um, I'll usually do the same thing, but uh, just kind of in my head with pop pops and pings, just the cadence that I should be hearing it in real time. I'll be doing that and thinking about the reload. So that's how I do it too, same way. And then I don't watch the shooters in front of me for the when I'm on deck or in the hole. I think that's just the worst. Because if Ku's right before me and I watch him run a stage, I'm be like, okay, like don't do that. Or if he's running a stage or a prod shooter in front of you, and you're like, what the hell are they doing? Like, why are they running like that? And you might see someone who constantly runs it differently, and it's just gonna mess with your head. So, and just, you don't want to see someone else's stage plan and then somehow get that ingrained into your subconscious and think that that's what, you're supposed to do too.
Yeah, I think I should probably remove that because there've been times where I would see someone else shoot it and I'm like, dang, so they saw something I didn't, or they shot this array that I didn't plan to shoot it, and then I
It's
do a
too,
last minute stage plan change and then it hurts me.
yeah.
That's why I never squatted with the super squad. I'm just kidding. But yeah, for me, when I do my make ready, I tend to talk to myself a lot. And I feel like as a B class shooter, I still have to constantly remind myself to, get a smooth draw. I think that's the most important thing for me when I make ready is that I'm constantly reminding myself to draw a little bit slower because I feel like when I draw a little bit slower, I tend to get that good grip compared to if I'm just like rushing to my draw. So yeah, I remind myself a lot, talk to myself a lot when during my make ready. And I also think one of the most underrated thing that people don't do during a make ready is to check to make sure that their dot is still screwed on tight because that happened to me. Like I shot a lot of stages with a loose dot before because I don't check to make sure that the dot and the screws are good.
I've never had that happen.
I shot with a loose dot at the 2022 Wisconsin match, the whole entire match. I didn't even check until the very last stage, and I was wondering why I was missing and had so much delta. So that was
Dude,
horrible.
I shot a pretty big. I think it was called Swamp Stomp in Louisiana a couple years ago, and I shot limited optics with my Springfield Prodigy. And halfway through the day, I was getting mics on like 5 to 10 yard targets, and I was like, "What the heck?" So I went to the safe table, and I was like checking everything, and my dot was loose.
Yeah,
And like
never.
I knew that was a problem because I've had problems with it ever since I got it, and I just decided to shoot it anyways because I thought I fixed it. But yeah, I freaking bombed that whole match because of that.
Chris, I don't know if it was you, but didn't last time your dot came off when you were shooting? Was that you?
With my lever action,
Was it your lever action? I remember someone it happened to someone
I
at
had
Pips.
I had my lever action on and the clamp for it because it's a Holosun uh 510 and it's got just like a clamp that you pinch down
Yeah.
for on the Picatinny and I must have hit it on a wall or something and it just went flying right off. And I got in my last position. I was like, where the heck is my dot?
Oh yeah, that was yeah, that was pretty funny. All right. Um, Next question. Do you think major power factor should still be a thing in USPSA?
No, no, I don't think so. Um, I think it depends. Unless you're shooting like a 45 single stack, or in single stack and revolver, I could see it because you're also at a round count disadvantage. But in limited, I mean, sure, you lose like 2 rounds. In open, when you're loading hot 9 round ammo, I don't think that there's any reason for major power factor at all. And I think that the sport would just be simpler without it. I mean, like PCSL is doing without it, and I think you'll still get people who shoot divisions that have major power factor. Um, but like I would still shoot open with minor if that was the only option because you still get more advantages. You still get a frame mounted dot. You still get a mag well and a compensator and all this and that. So I'd still choose to do it. And I did it in PCSL. Um, but no, I mean even like if you think about like low cap divisions like revolver and single stack, they're never going to choose major power factor over those 2 rounds that they miss out on. If they were in single stack and they only had 8 rounds, or if they were in revolver and they only had six, they're all shooting minor. All the best revolver and single stack shooters are all shooting minor. So I don't really see any point of it.
I agree. I think that I think the math kind of shows, right? Like like a prime example of this that I can think of is Nils, and he won, was it production nationals a couple years ago with a minor gun.
Well, it'd be production nationals and everyone's shooting minor.
It was Iron National.
Iron nationals.
It
So
was
against
it?
Yeah, he shot limited and beat um so he was shooting limited with a minor power factor canic.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, that's what I meant to say. Thank you, guys. But like he won it. So like that's, I mean, sure, it's a sample size of one, but like that's just proof in the pudding that like it can be done. And just because you have major doesn't mean you automatically win. I think personally, I think the biggest thing would be the caliber diameter, right? Because you have a, like, if you shoot a 45, it's obviously bigger than a 938. So if you, I mean, essentially it's a line cutter.
Mhm.
So I don't know how we would combat that, or how we would, you know, take an account of that. But I think that's probably something that would either stay or go, I guess. I don't know what I'm trying to say here, but
Right.
yeah.
Yeah, I agree with both of you because I forgot who it was, but I shot their someone's limited gun before and it was in 40, but then it felt like 9 millimeter because they reloaded. So I feel like, yeah, I don't think there should be major power factor.
Well, and plus it would help with the wear and tear on guns and not not beating up an open gun with hot 9 millimeter rounds and stuff like that. So if major power factor did go away, I would obviously just shoot factory rounds.
Yeah.
I wouldn't see the reason.
Yeah, it's kind of crazy. I shot my buddies. He had a 38 Super Comp open gun just for fun. And I was like, dude, this thing is softer than my minor 9 mil. Like, and you're getting major power factors. Like, what the heck?
As long as major power factor is a thing, though, I'm still gonna do it. Like, because I mean, it'd be foolish not to.
Yeah, yeah, just like we spoke on earlier about the kind of gear advantage thing.
Right.
Do you guys think major power factor should be in care optic and production?
No. No, I don't think major power factor should be on a slide mounted uh, gun. Period. Like they have the Lim 10 optics where it's in you can do it in 40 or major power factor. I just don't think it's smart. I think it's gonna just beat up dots and it's just not worth it.
Do you know if you could shoot minor in limited 10 optic?
Yeah, you can,
Okay. All
but
right.
you wouldn't. I mean, Tanfo Timmy's going to shoot 40, so you might as
Yeah.
well, shoot against someone who's going to have major power factor. So
Anything else you guys want to add on to that?
no, I'm just curious to see if PCSL does kind of translate anything into USPSA, if they see how PCSL is doing it, and maybe modify rules within USPSA to mimic anything within PCSL. They find that it's going well.
Well, didn't USPSA just pass a bylaw that we now can use video evidence?
They did, yeah,
So I mean that's a start.
yeah,
Did you say video evidence?
yep.
What do you guys mean by that?
So like if you let's say you get DQ'd for a 180 break and you have sufficient evidence
Mm.
to show you didn't. It used to be in USPSA the rules did not allow video evidence, period, to overturn anything. But now you could do it. You could do it for a foot fault. You could do it for whatever. They'll look at it. Doesn't mean that they'll necessarily overturn it, and it needs to be definitive. Like multiple angles help, and stuff like that, because um, the one point of view can kind of skew it a little bit. But I think I mean, it's smart. We live in a technological era. We should be using it. So I like it. I wouldn't like it as an RO though, because you know you're going to get a million people trying to show you video evidence all the time and arguing everything.
I thought video evidence was only for Instagram, but okay. All right. Um, all right. Next question. How do you do at major? Do you think you do better or worse?
Tanner,
I tend to do worse. There's been a few majors where I did pretty good, and the time like from what I remember, the times that I did good was when I cared less, when I was strictly just there to have fun, when I treated it as a level one. Um, but those are also the times where like I shot with my friends, we all squatted together, so like I was very comfortable. And the part that where I do bad in is if I am away from my home range or I'm away from people that I know and shoot regularly with, and I kind of know how the groove is or whatever it may be, then I tend to just kind of overthink things and I isolate myself a little bit. Um, or I see new faces and I'm like, I got to beat this guy or this guy, I've seen him or I've heard about him. I heard how good he is. And like, that's what I'm going to compare myself to. I always end up doing that. And I always end up doing worse. So I tend to do, I guess you could say worse at major matches.
I tend to do a little bit better usually at majors. I think that with the pressure of it, I tend to tighten things up and dial everything in a little bit and analyze stages from more of a um, methodical mindset of really seeing, okay, I'm not going to hero or zero this. I'm going to take my points and go, and just shoot within my abilities. And I think I'm pretty much the same. Like I'd say I shoot locals just as good as I shoot a major match, and then I just capitalize on everyone else, like you guys doing worse at a major.
So for me, I do worse because there's two reasons. One is because of lack of sleep. So for example, if I gotta go to Iowa, I will get up 2 in the morning and drive straight to the match. Okay, so I don't actually go get a room like you, Chris, and go do a walkthrough. So I'm fucking tired of shit. And then second reason is because major matches usually have small stages. Well, they have some small stages, and I don't know why, but I just suck at like small stages. And I don't know why. I don't know if it's a mindset thing. I don't know if it's because I struggle making a stage plan for small stages. So the small stages hurts my score a lot. Because I may have really good runs on the big to medium sized stages, but as soon as I get to the small stages, I basically throw away the whole entire match. So the question for you guys is, why do you guys think I suck at small stages?
There's just a smaller margin for error. Um, in a bigger stage, you could drop some points or maybe botch a reload, but you're still running, so it might not hurt you. But if it's a short course, a Michael tank it, a Delta could tank it, um, a standing reload where you botch it will tank it. Um, it's just there's no filler in between. There's no movement to mask mistakes. It's just raw ability and just running it flawless, and you kind of have to, you know.
Yeah, and I like Chris's take on it because
Yeah.
he's coming at it from a strategical mindset. And like my I guess my only thing would be like you probably see a short stage and you're like you probably the first thing you think of is speed,
Hmm.
right? So
Hmm.
at that point you're already kind of I don't want to like say that you already lost, but I guess you put yourself in the wrong mindset.
Hmm.
And sure like speed is big on a I guess you can say um like speed is good anytime really in the sport, but when all you like when your main focus is just speed, you're gonna lack in other areas, and then it's a I guess snowball effect from there, right? Like you then make your mics, you make your errors, and then you think about those errors as you're shooting the stage, and you can't get over that, and then it's just everything kind of compiles, and you're like, well, I just tanked that stage, great, you know, and one of the easiest stages in the world, and I just tanked it.
Well, and the thing too is, you think about the sport, it's points divided by time. So the less time that there is within a stage, the more the points matter. If it's a 50-point stage, let's say it's just five open targets, two into each, and they're just right in front of you. And you could hose it down and just really just be transitioning through, ripping them, and go Alpha Charlie, Alpha Charlie, Alpha Charlie, Alpha Charlie the whole way through. And the difference between doing that and getting good transitions and good trigger pulls and getting two alpha into each is maybe a second total, which is, sounds great, but you also dropped, 4 points per. And so that would be 20 points total. And that's huge. So the time, you're not going to run fast enough on a short course to make up for the points lost. So on a short course, alphas are huge. And you just have to get you can't really look at a short course in terms of hanging them on paper and going as quick as you can. You have to really tighten up your focal point and shoot alphas.
So you guys are basically saying, when it comes to like short courses, the best ideal plan for like a B class shooter like me is to play it safe. Not go slow, but to like play it safe and making sure that I get my hits, even though I may be a little bit slower.
Confirming alphas, yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah,
Got
You're just saying
got
you can't outrun the points lost. You have to get points in hand.
yeah. I think to sum it up, I would just say prioritize points.
got it. Got it. Anything else?
No.
Nope.
All right. All right. Next question. We're down to our last two questions. What are some stage planning myths and cardinal sins?
I could start this one. So I came up with this question, and my whole thought was trying to debunk these common stage beliefs. So, for example, you see a tux, I'm going to throw three at a tux. That's just like a common thing that you see everybody do. Oh, there's a tux, I'm going to throw three at it. Um, so that's one, and I used to do that all the time. If it's fast enough and I'm shooting and moving and I'm not going to lose or gain anything from taking another shot, sure, I'll throw three at it. Um, but some things that I do and don't do when I'm planning stages is um, I try not to retreat and shoot on hardcover or penalty targets. I'll shoot them moving forward, but I won't. I try to avoid retreating and shooting penalty targets. And um, other things I don't, I try to do is I try to move and shoot as much as I can. Like a newer mindset would be like, all right, I have to run here and I can see all the targets and I can shoot them all. Then I have to run here and I stop and I can see all the targets and I can shoot them all. Um, so I really try to blend the positions as much as I possibly can. Um, Another one you'll see people do is two presentations per swinger. And obviously it depends on the swinger, but I just wait for an apex and try to just, shoot two good shots at it and own it because the time it takes for it to leave and come back, I'll eat my mic. One presentation on a swinger, and that's what I go for almost every single time, unless I know that I tanked it and I can keep shooting it while not losing time, which is pretty rare. Um, but yeah, one presentation on a swinger for me every single time, and then, like I said, not try not to retreat on penalty targets and shoot them, and then just moving and shooting. But I don't go for the tux three per thing. I see a lot of guys do that.
Yeah, Chris kind of hit what I was going to say. I guess the biggest, I guess the myth for me was the three pucks or three shots per tux, and then swingers. Like when I first got interested in swingers, I was at a local level one match, and this match director and stage designer kind of was known to make complex stages in preparations for majors. Um, so I was kind of thrown into the wolves, and I would listen to all these guys come up with their stage plans, and they're like, remember, four shots on that swinger, like just or whatever, five shots to just spray at it and just hope you get two on paper. And then like looking back at it, it's like, well, that's a shit, man. Like that's a shit way to think about things, right? Like how about you just make two good shots and leave instead of just wasting ammo? You know what I mean? So yeah,
I also try to move on the draw if I can. If it makes sense, I'll move on a draw and try to use that draw time to get to a better position or something if I can. Instead of if I can see it right in front of me, but I'm gonna have to run by it anyway. I don't want to draw, stand there and shoot it and then run. I'll retreat first or whatever, leave it, come back to it, because I think that drawing and making an extra position out of standing and shooting is a bad idea.
What
yeah.
do you
One of
guys?
the
Yep. Go ahead.
um, one of the I guess the things when it comes to stage planning that I don't necessarily like is is the people who tend to like over game it and they do like the most outrageous things ever and it does them no good and it always baffles me because I'm like, okay, but why are you doing that? Like what was the point of that? Like I've seen dudes who start in like a freaking like a track star kind of like not essentially to the ground, but like if it's like running to a barrel to grab your gun and running to the next barrel to grab your mag. I've seen dudes who like fully take advantage of that just to think they're gonna sprint like a sprinter, and it's like why? Because it's always in the first step is always backwards for them usually. Like they take a step backwards and then they start running forward. So it's like, well, that didn't do anything for you. That just built up tension and whatever. So over gaming starts is probably another thing that I don't think is a big deal.
Or if it doesn't say wrist below belt, you'll see guys sometimes hover their hand right over their gun. It's like, well, you don't practice a draw like that, and you'll see them botch it anyway.
Exactly.
And right over their gun.
Exactly. 100%.
Every other stage you ever run, it's always wrist below belt or
Hey, hold
whatever.
on. You guys keep talking. I'm gonna run to the bathroom real quick.
Okay, have fun.
Yep. Keep talking.
But yeah, I know you see guys who it'll say, it won't specify hand position, so they'll be like, all right, I can hover my hand over my gun because it doesn't say I can't. But it's they wind up botching it anyway and getting a bad grip on it because they never practice it.
And that's table starts. Unloaded table starts. Have you seen guys do the whole like karate chop thing where they try to smash the gun and the mag together?
I've seen it where people have their mag upright and then they slap the gun
It's
on
like,
top of it.
Yeah, and it's like that didn't really do anything. You could have just loaded the gun normally, like you do every single time. And you
Or if I mean if it goes bad, it's gonna go really bad.
really, yeah,
Like I don't want to slam my gun down on the table like that, and I never practice it, so I don't see the point.
exactly. Yeah, they're just like I guess there's a point of diminishing returns. Is the way
Yeah.
to put it.
I would be lying though if I haven't said that I've tossed a mag at a stomp pad to activate it before, just for fun.
I feel like I've seen that at national. People are doing that at Nats. I think it was Carolina.
There was a Nat stage like last year where a guy, I think it was a PCC shooter, threw a mag, and you could otherwise you had to stomp it, shoot it, run to the other side, stomp it, shoot it, and then come back because the stomp pads activated the other side. So
Yeah,
he just from the far position tossed it and was able to skip running another 12 feet. So I mean, there's certain times where sure the risk, if he missed it, he knows he just has to stomp them both. But yeah, I mean, if you don't practice it, don't try it. It's not going to magically go well the one time you do it in a major if you've never done it before.
So I have a question for both of you.
Okay.
Um, what do you guys think about standing and reloading? So before you guys answer me, so for me, I find it harder to stand and reload compared to stand moving and reloading. Why do you guys think I struggle with, why do you guys think I do better with moving and reloading compared to standing and reloading?
I think it's your head because when you're moving and reloading, you're thinking about the movement process. Reloading is subconscious,
Mm,
which you can do. You do that in dry fire,
yep.
like we all do that. But when you're thinking about the reload, like you have nothing else to think about, just like, hey, reload my gun and start shooting. That's when you start to get in your head and you're like, okay,
Mm,
things up. But like you said, like when you're moving, you're thinking about you're moving. That's what
yeah.
you're thinking about. So the reload just comes naturally, all subconscious, all in your head.
Might also just be the time you get to if you're running and you know you're going to take 4 steps, then you know you have 4 steps and you go a little slower with it and really confirm and see that
Mm,
that could be part of it too. Just knowing that it's not just raw time. Like I have to slam a half-second reload or something because I have to because I'm on the clock. You know I can't do anything else in this time anyway. All I'm doing is reloading. So maybe you're going at 80% speed and it's just that much easier.
that makes sense. So what about, okay, so when you guys dry fire, do you guys dry fire an empty mag? Because I noticed that when I dry fire with an empty mag, I can't reload for shit, and because I feel like my mag keep getting caught onto the mag well. Is it? Do you guys think it's because the bullet helps the mag go in easier? Is that true?
Yeah, because it's making a wedge on the end.
Okay.
I use the double alpha weighted dummy mags because they're bright purple. I can have them at a safety table if I want to. So sometimes I'll bring them to majors and practice things. But yeah, I mean, if you can really hammer in a reload with an empty mag, then you're definitely gonna, be able to do it with bullets in it because it's just got that little wedge on the end, and it's gonna, give you that little bit of forgiveness.
Hmm.
Yeah,
Okay.
I reload, so I just reload dummy rounds and I keep them in a
Yeah.
separate, whatever. Although I do have a story about how my buddy had dummy rounds that I gave him, and we were dry firing in the hotel with him the night prior to the shoot, and he kept them in his gun in his mags. So the first stage, he had like 8 malfunctions of him just racking out dummy rounds like a freaking idiot.
All right. All right. We're down to our last and final questions. You guys ready? All right. Have you experienced burnout and what do you do to combat it?
Yeah, I've definitely had burnout. I felt like, especially last year, I was feeling it pretty hard. So I switched divisions. I shot LO instead, and sometimes I would shoot that lever action PCC just for fun. There's something about when you're at a high level and you know that you can win any local you go to. Um, you're constantly putting this pressure on yourself, and it's hard to maintain. And everybody makes mistakes, and the best shooters will have bad matches, and you just don't give yourself that forgiveness. So showing up to a match with let's say limb optics, and knowing that you're at a bigger disadvantage and it's harder, or it's a platform you're not as familiar with, or if you're shooting a lever action PCC and you're like, there's it's not possible for me to get high overall. It doesn't matter what I do, I will not get it. It takes a lot of pressure off. So every now and then I'll pepper in just sort of an F around match, where I know that the scores don't matter and I don't even look at them and I don't care. Um, so burnout's real. I mean, by the time by the fall of every year, I'm ready to be done with it and clean my guns and put them in the safe and take some time off. And I think everyone should take time off. In 2020 and 2021, I basically never stopped touching my guns, and I would still dry fire every day. I never took a break ever, and I was definitely feeling burnout by the ends of those seasons. Um, but especially like I was saying, when you're at a higher level and every match win is attainable, then you have a hard time maintaining that level the whole time.
Yeah, that's great. I agree. Breaks are awesome. Breaks are good. Um, but like I've experienced burnout like multiple times, and I think when those burnouts happen, it was because I was taking it way too serious, like to the point where it was affecting me as a father and family life. Like I started prioritizing matches and shooting, and financially, all everything was going towards guns, ammo, matches, travel, all this stuff. And like once it started to take a damper on the family, like that was like my biggest click of like, "Hey, you need to dial this back, dude. Like for one, take a break. For two, make it fun again, right? Like if you get to the point where you're not having fun anymore, like that's obviously like you should probably change something up. Um, so yeah, that was yeah. I think taking a break is probably the biggest thing. Or like Chris said too, like if you don't want to take a break but you just want to have fun again, switch up divisions or maybe even find a new hobby that you can do. Sometimes instead of shooting matches all the time.
Yeah, I agree with both of you. That is why sometimes I decide to just shoot from concealment for fun. Yeah.
Well, it's also nice to just mix it up, like the Ace VR is nice because it's just different.
Hmm.
If you're finding burnout, maybe it's just too much of the same thing over and over again. So something to make it new and exciting. If that means buying a new gun, buy a new gun. Or maybe trying a match that you've never been to or a club you've never been to. Um, it can help. But yeah, I find giving yourself enough time to want to come back to it. Like if that means, instead of shooting a match that week, you go golfing or whatever, and then maybe you find like, man, I really wish I had a shot a match or whatever. Then you're ready to come back to it. But like a lot of these guys who shoot 30,000 plus rounds a year, like I don't know how they maintain that level. I just can't do it. I hardly touch my guns as is, and it feels like too much.
So, Chris, since you brought up the Ace VR as a master class, do you think an Ace VR, would you recommend it to shooters in general with your
Um,
4 days experience?
Yeah, I'd recommend it. I like it. It's cool. And it's given me a little bit of, um, something to be excited about. I've found myself doing it instead of dry firing. So, I mean, I wasn't dry firing at all, but it's better than not touching your gun, period. So, um, I'd imagine it helps. You can't, you have to give yourself a little bit of a reminder when you get to a match, I would think, that it's going to feel a little different. You got to get used to that. But with draws, maybe activator sequencing, visual confirmation. Like there's a lot of open paper and steel and different varying speeds that you'd shoot them in. So I think it's really good for that. But obviously the recoil management's not there. It just feels different. It's not moving in your hands. I can't shoot my real gun as fast as I'm shooting the Ace VR, but it's better than not touching the gun. Period.
Yeah, I agree. As a B class shooter, I would recommend it too. I recommend the Ace VR also. Not because I think that the Ace VR will make you a better shooter, but I definitely think that the Ace VR will help you with your vision and also with your stage planning um, and your confidence. Because in the Ace VR world, you get to do you get to rerun the stage as much as you want, and then it just boosts up your confidence. It makes you want to go faster in real life. So
Yeah.
yeah. So yeah, Tanner, you need to get the Ace VR, man, so you could play with us. Chris, I will add you on the Ace VR tonight.
Yeah, I still have no idea how it works, but
Yeah.
fun.
All right, all right, man. Anything else?
No, I think I'm good.
All right. So for the viewers, Chris, and Tanner, where can they look up for? Where can they find you guys? Chris, you can start.
So on my Instagram, it's just C is for Chris, no spaces, all lowercase.
Do you have a YouTube?
No.
Okay. What about you, Tanner?
Instagram, Facebook, Tanner Liang. Instagram's a little different. I think it's Tanner_Liang. YouTube, same thing, Tanner Liang. Just my name.
All right, I'll put all the information in the description. So, if nothing else, I guess we will end this. All
All right.
right. You guys have a good night, man.
You
You
too,
too.
man.
I'm
Take care of this on.
I'm gonna stop recording right now.